Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Tarot and the Tree. This is Io Kirkwood from Serenity and Soul, and I'm going to be your guide throughout this. So here we are. You can see the glyph of the Tree of Life in this episode 2 of the Tarot and the Tree, and I had tried to do this the last time, but I want you to look at the 3 pillars. So at the top is number 3, Bina. That is at the head of the pillar of severity. And then if you go up a little and to the right, you'll see Kether, which is the first sphere, and it heads the top of the pillar of equilibrium. And then, of course, if you go down and a little to the right, you're going to see Hokmah, which is Sephira 2, and it heads the pillar of mercy. So today we're going to talk about Kether, which is at the top of the pillar of equilibrium. So as we work through these 22 paths of the Tarot and the Tree, you will be confronted with differing opinions about what goes where. I am providing this information from multiple sources, and you will decide, after doing your own study, which understandings support your work with Tarot. Qabala is an entire system in and of itself, but you are actually only studying this for the purposes of Tarot, so your dive doesn't have to be quite as deep as if you were a Kabbalistic scholar. All right, so I do not claim any expertise in the Hermetic Kabbalah, which is what this is all about. Instead, I claim that my studies of this tradition deepened my understanding of the Tarot. So as discussed in the first episode, there are 4 worlds, and all 10 Sephira, as well as the 22 paths, exist in each of those worlds for a total of, so in the first world, which is Absolute, we have the entire tree there with all the paths, but we also have that in Bria, which is the second world. We have that in Yetzirah, which is the third world, and then we have it in Asiya, which is the fourth world. Now, I also don't claim to know how to properly say these particular words. They are Hebrew, and I am a reader, and even some English words I mispronounce because I have read them but never actually heard someone say them. So just keep that in mind. But I want you to understand that certain Sephira are more closely identified with certain worlds because of a similarity in evolutional manifestation. So the higher up in the tree, the higher the world, the less formed that world is. So for Kether, what we will be looking at is absolute, all right? And that is the world of emanations. So Kether is known as the first swirlings and is itself an emanation from the veils of negative existence. In other glyphs of the tree, you will see 3 arches that are above Kether, and it's Ein, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof R, right? And they have their own terminology in English, but they are the veils of negative existence. So, Kether holds no form, only pure being. And it is a latency only 1 degree removed from non-existence. So this is like the twinkle in your daddy's eye before you were even born, much less thought of. So, given this, I attribute the world of Absolute, the world of emanations, to Kether, because everything comes forth from Kether, even in the most physical worlds like Asiya. It is a first swirling of manifestation. So, each Sephira has a host of correspondences that will deepen one's understanding of what that Sephira represents on the Tree of Life glyph, right, which is what you are looking at. Diane Fortune lists these attributes for each Sephira in her seminal masterpiece, The Mystical Qabala. And if you join our Tarot Share or our Divination Share group, here on Facebook. These particular resources are going to be posted so that you can have access to them and figure out how to purchase them if you're interested. So things like a God name, a magical image, there's archangels and orders of angels. There's also a mundane chakra, which is usually a planetary attribution in the world of Asiya, rather than an energy medicine attribute. So don't confuse it with Tibetan chakras or anything of that sort. They're talking about planetary influences, and what I mean by that is that we're talking about Mars in Gavura, right? Or Jupiter in Gedula, or the zodiac belt in Hokma, all right? So then we also have a spiritual experience, a virtue and a vice, a microcosmic correspondence, which means it's a correspondence to the human body and to the human experience. And then there's also symbols that you can use as sort of like mandalas to dive more deeply in a meditative state into what that sephira means. All right. So if you want to do that, great. But right now, we're just focusing on the tarot. So there's a book by Robert Wang called The Kabbalistic Tarot, and it has several relatable correspondences for Kether that I'll share here. So the first one is, Kether is all that is, and the breath of that which is not. Or, Kether is the source of energy from the infinite unmanifest. He also states that Kether is the first motion. Kether embodies all creator gods and goddesses, all right? And then Kether is that from which we come and to which we shall return. And I thought those were very thoughtful sort of meditations that you can think about as far as what Kether means for the tarot. All right, so the 4 tarot cards associated with Kether are the aces, and they are as follows. Now, it's going to get a little tricky here because there's different attributions from different authors, but I know that Dion Fortune and Robert Wang are in agreement that the Ace of Wands is the root of the powers of fire. And fire, as we had discussed the last time, is absolute. All right, so that's the world of absolute. So this is pure spirit. And then the Ace of Cups is the root of the powers of water. And this is attributed to the world of Bria. And it is the mental plane. Then the Ace of Swords is the root of the powers of air, which is Yetzirah, which is considered astral or emotional world. And then Ace of Pentacles is the root of the powers of earth, which is attributed to Asiya, and it's the physical world. So again, this is the order that is found in Dion Fortune's book, as well as Robert Wang's. But now we're going to move into some more pagan, witchier kind of territory with Ellen Cannon Reed. She follows Fortune's and Wang's ordering on the elements, but switches the suits around. All right, and so as you go through certain, like she has the Witch's Tarot, and that particular deck, wands and swords are flipped. So swords become fire, wands become air. And this is a common switch that is made across traditions. So it depends on how you feel about it. And I will explain my way of looking at it so that you understand why I make certain attributes. But she indicates that Ace of Swords instead of wands is Kether acting through fire, which is still considered absolute, spirit will in the sphere of creation. And then, of course, she has Ace of Cups, Kether acting through water in Bria, mental mind in the sphere of creation. And then Ace of Wands instead of swords, Kether acting through air, emotion feeling in the sphere of creation, or Yetzirah. And then Ace of Pentacles, Kether acting through earth, Asiya, the physical concrete in the sphere of creation. So that's Ellen Cannon Reed, she switched the Ace of Swords and the Ace of Wands so that they have different elemental attributes. And this is, how she has this book called The Goddess in the Tree, or The Witch's Qabala. And then she also has The Witch's Tarot. So those books, I think one of them is out of print. I think it's The Witch's Tarot, but The Goddess in the Tree, which was renamed The Witch's Qabala, is still in print. Now, I have a different understanding of this based on fairy witchcraft tradition that puts the suits in the following order. So my Ace of Wands is fire, it's Absolute, the world, and it's spiritual will. But then I have, instead of cups, I have swords, which is air, in Bria, which is mental mind for me. And then I do cups that are water in Yetzirah, and astral emotional. And then, of course, pentacles is earth, Asiya, physical manifestation. All right, so I'm not saying that my way is better than the others. All my order does is inform how I read a spread based on how fully manifest the element, the sephira, and the world is in a numerologically significant to me manner. So, fire is the most subtle of elements in Absolute, and in my tradition, wands represent fire. Fire is also about free will, a divine gift that is spiritual in nature. Air is the next most subtle element in my tradition, and that's the world of Bria. It's represented by swords, and discernment is a blade wielded by the mind. Thus, air is represented by swords and is mental in nature, and that's why I assign it to Bria. I'm not saying I'm correct, I'm saying this is what works for me. Now, water, Yetzirah, the world of Yetzirah, is less subtle than air and is represented by cups. Emotions are associated with the astral plane and the heart. I also see cups as more a part of the human experience and closely linked to the physical body, more so than swords or wands. And then finally, and I think this is the one that everybody agrees on because we can all look at it directly, Earth is the least subtle of all the elements in the world of Asiya and is represented by pentacles. The physical plane is associated with pentacles without question. It seems to be the only element that everyone can agree on as far as the attributes. Now that we have gone over sort of the differing opinions, there's also this sort of funny attribute of the tens of the tarot also belonging in the sphere of Kether. And the reason this is, it follows a hermetic understanding that the macrocosm, or the big picture of Kether, is expressed in the small, sort of like the tree as opposed to the forest of Malkut, the sphere Malkut. So you can see that Kether is at the top, and then down at the bottom here we have Malkut, which is 10, right? But they say that Kether, the macrocosm, is found in Malkut, the microcosm, and vice versa. So that's a hermetic understanding. So that means that the tens are actually the full manifestation of Kether, or the aces. So if you start with the aces, you know that you are at the seed, and as you move throughout the numerology of the deck, you end up in the tens, which is the full manifestation of that seed thought. So all aces are seeds. So the Ace of Wands will mean that we are looking at a new act of will, initiative, a new enterprise, and a new opportunity. The Ace of Swords represents a new idea, a new perspective, a creative thought. Ace of Cups is a new feeling, an intuition, an inspiration, affirmation, or abundance. And then Ace of Pentacles is a new skill, growth, financial gain, and a new offer. So Benabel Wen, who does the holistic tarot, She indicates that aces represent beginnings and power. However, she takes it a step farther. She says that if you have 3 aces in a spread, that's an indication of wealth and success in whatever you're asking about. And that if all 4 aces are in a spread, this indicates that whatever it's about has exceptional greatness to it. So that is how we would use the aces in a spread.